So there we go. Another bullshit that people ask about.
Before we do restart, how many of us here have currently in a motor vehicle?
Yeah.
Come on, I don't know, Barry has. Alright, that'll work. Because when we have lunch approaching 1 o'clock, it's like probably a good 15-minute walk to the nearest place that does beverages and food. So it would make more sense if anyone's got vehicles, we all think two vehicles or whatever piling, then we can be there in like less than 5 minutes. We'll have an hour and 15 for lunch, so we've got an hour and a bit there. And, yeah, cool. That's cool. I'm just working out whether we need to order taxis to come to us. So,
it's a bit like Matthew's thing, isn't it? You need to speak for yourself. That's how I guess it is.
Yeah, it's too much while I'm choice as well.
Yeah, when it's necessary.
Right, it's trying to disprove it. You know, you're saying and then in the end, it's not with you.
It's just like a loop. If this doesn't happen, this doesn't happen.
I think it was more
Not just give up.
but I said the Friday thing was the pressure to do Scott. That's how they do it.
Absolutely. It is. Absolutely.
Still like issues with that. And then on Saturday it was more a case of they were already practiced with it. Well, so very strong about that. So you are saying that I just,
you know, but
everything else.
That's fine.
Yeah, but if you've got wills to
get back to things. I mean, to be honest, I'm quite happy to let you just talk on there. Next door to me. I've got some stuff to share. Now, we're going to have lunch break approaching 1 o'clock, and we do, just for those away, we're going to work out at that moment if we can, people with more vehicles perhaps all share and then go on convoy to the nearest place in a vehicle, sort of like 5 minutes, whereas if we have to wait for cabs and all that, it'll just get really messy. Okay. Hopefully it's starting to make some sense, my thought process. And I'm making a point of saying my thought process because it's the way I've chosen to decide and believe in terms of what goes on in people's heads. Because by believing it in that fashion, as I say, it took away any fear because there can never be any failure, it's always their fault. That's more so when we come to pre-talk, environment, pre-talk environment, expectation, belief, about presentation, stroke, confidence. Just remind myself to cover those points. Unless someone has already seen you do a show before, essentially, they've no real clue that you're a hypnotist. If you were just bumping into them in the train, they don't know. Unless you've got a fucking t-shirt saying I am the hypnotist. Which some of us start fuckers do. Don't mention names, don't need to, but you really are making yourself look a bit of a tosser wearing a t-shirt saying I'm an hypnotist. You don't see accountants wearing t-shirts saying I'm an accountant. You don't. It's fucking wrong. But anyway, I'm not going to rant on. It rhymes with that actually, but anyway. So you've got to, if it was straight hypnosis, which obviously you would only be doing if you had the correct licenses and insurance in place, then you've got to introduce yourself so that instinctively they know you are the hypnotist. If it's a stage show, you've got a slight extra additional, most of the time, plus point in your favour that it will have been advertised that there's a hypnotist on, and generally speaking, your picture will be on the poster. If it's not, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, when the person walks on stage and the voiceover says, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome," they've come to see a hypnotist, on walks the person, they make the logical connection that that person is clearly the hypnotist. They're not sat there as human beings, especially when they pay money for a ticket. They're not going to be sat there thinking, well, and it doesn't matter whether it's consciously or unconsciously, forget about that. Absolutely right. They're not going to be sat there thinking, I wonder when the guy who thinks he can hypnotise people's coming on. No, because it gets given a wanky term in psychology, cognitive dissonance, which roughly described means that human beings will generally prefer to continue with a destructive behaviour, shall we say, even when they know it is, or to deny something even though they know it's not. That isn't the reality. If it means they can avoid having to admit they're wrong. So in the same sense, people do not want to be telling themselves that they're daft or stupid. So they're not going to be saying to themselves, oh, I paid 10 quid for someone who's pretending they're a hypnotist. Because what they'd also be saying to themselves is, I'm a fucking idiot, I paid 10 quid to see someone who doesn't know what they're doing. This is going on at some fucking level, even though they're not aware of it. So what they are saying to themselves is, I'm going to see the hypnotist tonight. I hope he doesn't pick on me. Which is them saying to themselves that if he does, I could be hypnotised. Or they're going, I'm definitely not volunteering, I'm not making myself look dead. Oh, I'm looking forward to seeing the other people. Now, again, they're still saying to themselves that the hypnotist can do that. All of the things, their internal dialogue, will be convincing them that this is real. Even the people that go, I don't even believe in it. Well, why do you pay fucking 10 quid for a ticket? More accurately, they don't want to believe in it because they're probably scared of the idea that someone can make them do things against their will. And depending on how big your balls are, quite often they're people that if you've got the total balls, if they go, oh, I don't really believe in it before sure, they're quite often the people, if you go up to them, get them to stand up, you can sort of just go, sleep you bastard! And knock them side and neck, and it'll scare the living crap out of them. It'll shock them, they'll go into freeze mode that we spoke about before, and they will, because they've already been essentially convincing themselves without realising it, they will go under like a sack of shit. Or they'll get up off the floor and go like, and think that they're making you look a dickhead. Well, that's fine, because then we'll use one of your escape routes that we'll cover later and make them look a complete and utter prick. So that everyone else thinks, I don't want to look that daft. So then it becomes more pleasurable for them to do these daft things rather than not doing them. So that's what we're going to be setting up the context of. So, your pre-talk, opening patter, call it what you will, is the bollocks you say at the beginning. They want them in a certain state of mind so that they believe. It's meant to do a couple of things. It's meant to essentially establish the fact that you know what you're doing. So you've got, ideally, you want to be able to say the maximum amount of things with a minimum number of words. The same comes when you give them suggestions. Well, suggestions is after lunch. There's a way of giving them a suggestion that can fit into 6 words instead of 6 sentences. That will appear more confident, and it will make you look like you're more experienced, and therefore you must be good at what you do. So the brain process starts that if you're good at what you do and you're a hypnotist, you must be a good hypnotist, so therefore this is going to work. Every little bit comes together. It's not one of these items on their own, it's all of them together that makes it possible. You start breaking it down into the little bits, So hopefully you get an understanding of it, but when you lump them all together, you're stacking everything in your favour. And then you come to realise how ridiculously easy it actually is. So pre-talk will come to in a minute, because that's the shite you say at the beginning, which will also include covering your legally and stuff like that. Your environment. Well, you've got to make the best of your environment if you're a jobbing hypnotist, but it's a case of being aware of your environment. And I'm not going to talk at mega length about health and safety, because we will be taking away a disc containing health and safety and legal information. So to cover myself legally, I will tell you now that you have a duty of care in British law, it is a criminal offence not to assess all risks that do or could apply to each individual and environment when doing hypnosis. The information about that is on one of the dish you'll take away. It's also on the transparency template DVDs that are available.
So if hypnosis doesn't exist,
Because the people,
why do we have insurance? Why are there?
because the insurance companies don't understand it.
Right.
Hypnotists in general are not going to go, even if they could convince these brainwashed idiots, they're not going to go and say, look, it's all a crock of shit.
Because they get paid for it.
Because they're going to then, alright, might get insurance easier or cheaper. Because you've still got a legal obligation in any business to have insurance, public liability. But yeah, they might then get it cheaper, but unfortunately word would get out generally to the public. And then suddenly, the psychological environment bullshit that makes it work wouldn't be able to work anymore. So it is a bit of a catch-22 there. I mean, I say confidently, because it shouldn't be, it doesn't really bother me, because I'll be dead. But I suspect within my daughter's now 18 months old, I suspect within her lifetime, working on the basis that, let's say she lives till she's 90, that stage hypnosis shows, or stage hypnosis in any context, whether on the street or stage, will die completely. Because of the reasons I mentioned before. Human beings, the way they're being brought up, the lack of authority, the lack of conditioned response from when they're young to authority figures being told what to do. The environment's going to change. It's ultimately going to come to a point where all the mysticism, all the stuff that makes it work, won't be in society. So I predict, you know, if we could come back 300 years' time and look back on the history books, that within the next 100 years...
That could change if we get complete anarchy and somebody decides to do something about it. You know, that society could start going back again.
Well, it does though, don't it? I think probably he was the best hypnotist in the world, probably Hitler, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Because he created this persona, and he got people to flock him to follow him.
Well, he was aware of that. Unfortunately, I'm on about grassroots level. The mass populace, the great and washed, are bringing up, they're dragging the kids up. There's no respect, there's no authority, schools can't discipline, the infrastructure's falling fucking apart.
Right, the police.
I think every generation says that about the previous one, you know.
Are you
And
finding
we
it?
really do.
It depends how you look at it. I mean, in one regard, no, it's never difficult because there's no failure. But from the other point of view, it is a lot harder to get volunteers now than it was even 10 years ago.
Well, why is that?
The key thing I say, because there's a lot more of it seen on TV. You've got Bravo regularly showing street hypnosis, you've got McKenna on the telly. It's plus you're not as special anymore.
Well, wouldn't that make it better? There's more. You say there's more shown on TV. I haven't seen any on TV since.
Yeah, if you've got satellite every night of the week.
Yeah, but wouldn't it make it more popular the more you see on TV? Wouldn't it make it that people?
No.
Well,
You feel
If
like
it's
it's
no
like the
longer-
mystery, do you?
You're removing what's going to happen. The esoteric element's gone.
So essentially people are getting bored with it. But that's an exaggeration, but
You can use the word bored. I don't.
it's lost the element of shock or
Hypnosis for entertainment's changed
Yeah.
angle.
Yeah.
You've now got
There's
things
too
like
many other
exercise
choices.
and-
It's not, right, I mean, it's still amazing to an extent, but where in his old days and in Mesmer's time, it was the most fucking amazing thing I've ever seen. It was like a gift from the gods, magical and amazing. Well, they didn't have 5 TV channels to go and watch. Now, when they did have 5 TV channels, people still went out to the theatre more. But now, why should they? I know people do, but they don't on the same level. Why should they? When they can wait a month or two, and it's fucking broadcast on the telly, it's been filmed live. They've got so many more choices. There's so much more to compare it to as a comparison.
And I suppose
it isn't as amazing.
In a sense, with computers and kids with their Xbox and things, they see more amazing things on there than you can do as a human being. Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not.
There's another thing, of course, is that before it came on TV, and before the internet, it was really special.
Yeah.
Because there was no information about it. It wasn't in the public psyche apart from. When I was 17 and I went to that show, it was the local club. And I didn't even know what a hypnotist did. But everybody said, at that time, hypnotists had to ask for a night off for that visit. We got him, and it was packed to the rafters, they were busting them in. And we were all in that room, and I didn't even know what I was getting involved with. But I knew it was special, and it was going to be a special night. But that was before the internet, and this, free information, and before TV. So in a kind of a way, it brought it to the masses, but it spoiled it somewhat. It took some of that specialness away. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and that's happening even further with street hypnosis. I've met, certainly in the past few months, I've met physically a number of the street hypnosis community, as they like to call themselves, and they're genuinely nice people, the majority of them. As human beings, and some of them are actually technically very competent hypnotists. The vast majority are fucking egotistical wankers that need to get a life.
But is it not just display out in a social setting? Is that not what's the...
99% of it, yeah, they're not making any money from it. It's wanking intro, and most of the time they're actually hypnotising another street hypnotist.
Why?
Why? Yeah.
For what reason?
Because it makes them feel good, and then they'll have a go on someone else in the group, and they'll have meetups. When they do this, they just yank each other off. Now, then nobody want to tax on members of the public without licence, insurance or risk assessments. And they're totally devaluing it. It's not special. Someone's saying that, why should they then go and pay a fucking ticket price to win a theatre? Especially when the shite they'll have seen done as well. Getting their foot stuck to the floor or fucking forgetting the name. We're going to get 2 hours of that for a tenner, are we? Fucking devaluing it.
You know what I find now with, going back to the events I'm going to be doing tomorrow with aggression. So I'll do the aggression night, I'm not going to have 200 people, but I might have about 80, do you know what I mean? And it's a fiver. Oh, what they're there for and what happens with me, I find it's not necessarily that night. It's me saying, this is me, this is what I do. And then they come for the individual regressions and stuff like that. So I think it's kind of looking at it from a little bit of a different angle, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, regression, hypnotherapy, street hypnosis is not, unless you're encountering brain-dead fucking idiots, members of the public, and some of them are, sadly, but unless you're encountering that element, your average human being, yeah, they might be entertained, their husband has suddenly forgotten the name or whatever. But if you're really going to go turn around and go, I've got this deep-rooted psychological problem, I need therapy. You fuck, some tosser in the pub showing you something.
You know what I
You fuck.
The word that really bugs me more than anything else. It's head hacking. I hate that term.
Yeah, it's not
to me. It's just wrong.
It's, we've got to be a bit careful because it's a registered trademark now.
Yeah, but I don't like it. I don't like it, do you know what I mean? I don't like that.
Let's leave any sort of personal or non-personal attacks for lunch break. My point is that it devalues things, and that devaluation actually will, over time, and I'm confident everyone in this room will see it start to happen more year by year by year by year, but dramatically so, within the next 100 years, I don't believe, whether you call them a hypnotist, a mesmerist, whatever fucking name, it just won't be happening. There will not be people jumping around like chickens or playing fucking guitar. If you look at it fundamentally, and I make my living out of this stuff, but when you sit back and look at it really, it is a crock of shit. What exactly is entertaining about watching some pillock jump up with an inflatable guitar doing essentially this, while the backing track's on?
It's the craft of you being able to put that together.
There's
lots of things going on though, you know, there's the... And another thing that's lost, of course, is the mystique around it, because anybody can go on all of the internet and find out the nuts and bolts of it.
Oh.
And that takes away the speciality.
Does it?
You know?
Yeah.
Okay, you know, in a couple of weeks' time, in my hometown, Liverpool, Darren Brown has moved the biggest theatre in the city for 5 nights on the run.
Mm.
Now, you know, you go on YouTube or whatever, you can find out what's going on and stuff.
But he's not a hypnotist.
But what I'm saying, it's all that whole sort of, if you like, the whole variety thing, isn't it? And to me, there is still, you can still do it if you've got your own little niche. He started as a hypnotist, he took this little bit here, and he created something else. It's recreating it. Do you not think if you recreate it, put your own little spin on it?
I think what Barry said, if you go on the internet, you can find out exactly how Darren Brown does it.
Yeah,
so there's no mystery anymore. You're not left wondering.
Well, how can we still sell out 5 nights on the run?
Because...
Where's the 3,000
yeah, well, because
he's the top
they're
person
going
in the
to
country.
say, he could go on stage and take a shit on stage for an hour, and he'd still have that theatre full for 5 nights.
Yeah, but he had to create it somehow.
But
with all due respect to Darren, and I'm just, he had a contributory factor to it, but Darren Brown was created by Objective Television Productions, who decided on what this show was going to be like, and they went looking for somebody to act that part.
Yeah, okay. And
X factor.
If you've got the television behind you, right, here's an analogy to put it more into hypnosis, but it's the same thing. Paul McKenna could walk out onto a theatre stage and very easily just ask the volunteers the chairs are before. And all he would essentially need to do is go up to them and say, sleep, close your eyes, get on with the show. The majority of other hypnotists try and do that, they're going to have a fucking battle. Because they're not Paul McKenna.
really?
Because they're not the television, the perceived individual. The mass number of people, the majority of hypnotists, or the majority of mind readers, have got to do a hell of a lot more hard work in a hell of a different manner than the person who is perceived to be the current person, so to speak. Because the job's already been done before they go. Now, alright, it's on a lower level here, they may be paid to see this out, but at the end of the day, they're not. They're always going to get compared to, as a mind reader, Darren Brown. Or as hypnotists, they're always going to get compared to either Paul McKenna, or if they watch Bravo or a satellite channel, Peter Powers. In this country. In America, obviously, there's different people that have got the TV shows. So ultimately, unless you're lucky enough to suddenly become one of these people that everything just goes fucking right for you, which I'm not saying there isn't hard work involved in that, but there's also an element of luck and right, you know. Pretty much whoever had got that job and been cast as Channel 4's television mind reader, their chances are, because of the team and the planning, that they would be having the same end results as Darren. He's a fucking talented performer, without a doubt. He's fucking fantastic. But that was more about the context, the marketing, and all that. Whereas for the mass populace of us as hypnotists or mind readers, it's got to be more about setting things up. You've got to set things up psychologically that Darren doesn't need to.
Well, what
Paul McKenna doesn't need to.
It's that we have to prove something, haven't we?
Yes. Yes.
Basically.
But without looking like we're proving anything. Because otherwise you end up looking desperate.
They can see us as hypnotists, not as Peter Powers or Paul McKenna.
And that's the biggest thing, building that environment, isn't it? Creating that thing before you start it.
Which largely comes down to expectation and belief, which you can also substitute with misconceptions of the people thinking it is a swinging watch, or staring in their eyes, or talking with the stereotypical, the deeper you go, the better you'll feel, and the better you weird fucking voice tones. Now on the street, as much as I can't fucking see the point unless you're getting paid for this TV show, or something like that, on the street, yes, it can, if you frame it or present it as such, be acceptable to be wearing jeans and a t-shirt if you, when you come to the pre-talk, come to a minute, sort of act as though you are a David Blaine type. Because at least then you're buying into a model that the vast majority of people have heard of David Blaine, or seen some of him, even if it is only his dad sitting in a plastic box in London having eggs thrown in. So they tend to have a... So what you're doing is you're tapping in to what the person in front of you, whether that be an audience at a show or on the street or whatever, or if they're, is already thinking and expecting. And if you're not sure what they're thinking or expecting, ask them. But ask them in a way where it doesn't look like you're trying to find the information so you can use it to your advantage. Which does happen in the pre-talk. Because you will ask them certain questions that look like you always ask these, which you do, but it looks like you're just doing it because you're being friendly and sort of getting everyone to know each other. But actually you're going to pay attention to the audience, or the individual, their responses, and whatever information they give you, you can then react accordingly to use that against them.
Give them what they want, you say.
Yeah. You know, if people turn around, you know, so have you seen a hypnotist before? And you go, no. You go, oh, right. But you know what they do, don't you? And if they suddenly turn around and go, yeah, we'll take out a swinging watch and swing it, and off you go. They describe it like that they believe, that's the key, they believe and expect that to occur. And I guarantee you the quickest way you're going to get them hypnotised or compliant is to take out a swinging watch and put it in front of the face. Because that's what they believe. If they turn around and say, oh yeah, I've seen one on the TV, and you have them stood there, and next minute they're out of it, they're on the floor. If they say that, that's going to be the easiest and quickest way to get them into this compliant, hypnotised state. If they say, oh yeah, it's about staring at a light, isn't it? I've seen one on holiday and staring at the light and talking, you know, into the ear, then sure as hell, that's going to be the easiest, quickest, most effective way to get that individual.
What you are going to get, of course, is you're going to get lots of different people in the audience with different beliefs about what it is, aren't you? And it's trying to fit what you're doing into just about, you know, everyone's system.
Is it fitting it into the audience, or is it fitting it into your, what do you call them, delegates, subjects?
In terms of hypnotising, it's clearly the people that volunteer.
Okay.
In terms of your pre-talk, it's about everybody.
Right.
Because a hypnosis show is a numbers game, ultimately. Now, street hypnosis, this is an argument that goes on the internet. They go, oh, street hypnotists must be better than stage hypnotists because we don't have 100 people, say, to narrow down to 20 with their hands locked, to narrow down to the 10 most responsive. We deal with one person there and then that's it, randomly walk up to them on the street and we get phenomena from them and they forget their name and, you know, their hand sticks to a table or their foot sticks to the floor, and it's a fundamentally flawed fucking argument. Because all of the things the street hypnotists do can be done without hypnotising somebody, which you'll learn after lunch. All of them are nothing more than physiological tricks or verbal linguistics, and I don't mean using certain words to embed suggestions in the rest. I mean so that it appears like something's happened that fucking hasn't.
It is, you say hypno tricks.
Yeah, you know, tricks over.
Tricks, yeah.
And these people are deluding themselves themselves, and that's why so often they then go and try and do a stage hypnosis show and they fucking can't. I'm not going to mention names, but certain people suddenly, oh, I'll be able to do this, done magic, learn a bit, did magic as a living, do a bit of street hypnosis, get off the summer season, they go and do it down the fucking house. Had a couple of nights where it worked well, and then it didn't. And because it wasn't the same dynamic as the street. You had to actually manipulate them or hypnotize them. You know? And if I go up to, if I go up to Barry now and go, God, I don't know about this, but right, just thinking about it right now, what's your name? Just what's your name? No, you can say it again. 1, 2, 3, what's your name? Yeah, fantastic. 99.9% of people watching that, members of the public, will go away and go, fucking hell, he walked up to this straight and forget his name. I never gave him a chance to say his bloody name. It's got nothing to do with pattern interrupts or waking hypnosis. And if you watch the YouTube videos, the same thing bloody happens on the street. They haven't been taught this by the person who's taught them street hypnosis. The person who's taught them has told them this is how you do it and it's a pattern interrupt. It's about not giving them a chance to respond. And the beautiful thing is, even if Barry did suddenly say his name, the more I'd be able to see his lips about to move. In which case, the very moment he started to move his lips to say it, I'd immediately just tap his head and go, yes you can, go on. There's no fair bit.
I can now.
There's a difference, not just be a time difference. But if you're doing this, they don't know what to expect. Because they don't know what to expect, it would be classed in an LP's pattern interrupt, but no it isn't. It's irrelevant. It's just about talking over them, taking control and dominance. When naturally talk, it's polite to not speak while someone else is talking. So the fact that I'm still talking, most people, through politeness that's been conditioned into them, won't even try to say their name. But then when you tap them on the head and go, okay, you can say it and you keep quiet, it's socially acceptable for them to speak. The audience's perception is that they couldn't say the name, but they will also come to doubt themselves and think, could he have said my name? No. And because you're acting so confident, like this is what happens, they'll assume, actually, he must know that I couldn't have said my name, which means I couldn't have done. And they'll start into a trail of thought where they convince themselves that actually they had forgotten the name.
Whatever, I don't know now, you know.
Could you be hypnotised, dare I say?
I can't see what motivational environment someone could put me into personally to make that occur.
Because you know it's bollocks.
Let me see, is there an environment where... There is actually one environment, yes there is. I have arguably, anyone looking at the footage would say I have been, I have arguably been hypnotised by Andrew Newton on the street, without a licence or the correct insurance, in Wales, for some filming that was done, upon which I own the copyright, and therefore the evidence. Now, anyone who saw that footage would argue that I was hypnotised. He walked up to me, tapped me on the shoulder, sleeve, and I literally, because I'm walking down the street, I apparently don't know he's coming, of course I do. So the moment he tapped me on the shoulder, I literally just go, but even more quicker than that, because that's all good for camera. Anyone looking at it would say it's textbook hypnosis, not me. My motivation for doing that? Money. Yeah. So it's all about motivation, environment, context. Was I hypnotised? Depends what your definition of hypnosis is. I did what had been agreed at the moment I was supposed to, without questioning it, because of the motivation. That motivation was money. For other people it may have been the centre of attention, getting a round of applause. Fuck knows what Andrew's motivation was at the seminar in Birmingham, when after having a couple of bottles of wine, he came along with some of the delegates who were at my seminar, and, well, mine and his, because he was doing one of the days, and suddenly came along with us to Kerrang Radio, where I was doing a midnight adults only hypno show live on the radio, and for some bizarre reason, alcohol or what, I don't know what his motivation was. Well, yeah, he actually turned around and said, I will stooge for you on the radio if you want. If you buy the curry afterwards. That's actually what happened. Now Pete's got that on video camera. Now, I would have thought he could afford his own curry, and it would have been better for him not to appear on Kerrang radio under a fake name, where it was all videoed and there are photographs galore and witnesses galore to confirm that this to be true. But for some reason he did, and I was thinking, do I let him do it, or is he on there going to try and make it look some kind of cunt and then suddenly say who he is and twist? In fairness, he was the ultimate stooge. He was that good that, you know, when I did the induction sleep, he fucking went like a sack of shit off the stool in the waiting area in front of the radio people, and if I didn't know better, I'd say he was genuinely hypnotised. But that's up to him. You know, if you ever ask him about it, I either genuinely hypnotised him or he stooged. Either way you look at it, he either stooged for me or I genuinely hypnotised him. Either way, it probably wasn't a good idea for him to do that when he knew it was being videoed, photographed and recorded. So fuck knows what his motivation was. Except afterwards he did make a point of going, you are paying for the curry and the wine, aren't you? So everyone has and that's a true story by the way, I've got proof to back it up, otherwise I won't be saying it on camera. Everyone has some motivation. The point of that story is that even the world's #1 hypnotist had to have had a motivation for doing that. I personally don't know what it was, because I think I want more than a curry and a couple of bottles of wine, but nobody does anything without some reason for doing it. Again, presentation confidence is essentially just putting it across so you look like you know what you're doing. So pre-talk, right, the best way of explaining this, I'll have to break it down into certain points shortly, but I am actually going to, under Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988, Fair Usage Policy, thus making it legal, and also given the fact that I have witnesses and recorded proof that I had permission to publish this in my book, Confessions of a Hypnotist, on condition that it actually said this is Andrew Newton's opening patter, which it does. If you look in my book, it actually says this is printed with permission of Andrew Newton, and I've got the evidence on file regarding that. So I'm pointing out to you this is Andrew Newton's opening pattern. The reason I'm using that rather than my own is A, because then you won't nick mine, and B, but I'm not saying you should nick his, you shouldn't, because anyone who's seen Andrew will then know you were essentially just being a clone, and immediately you fall into that, you're not as good as the name person. You need to look, there's got to be, the psychological principles have got to be there, but it's got to be done in a manner that's clearly unique, because that then actually makes you more credible, because you're not just another one, right? But the psychological point behind it, I honestly have not come across anyone's pre-talk that is as cleverly put together to cover everything as Andrew's. That being the one that I know he certainly used when he was filling up the theatres in England. From what I've heard, his pre-talk now is to walk on stage and tell everyone how he's better than them, and he's going back to South Africa where it's nice and warm and they're quite sad for coming out in the cold weather and buying a ticket. So I believe, from the dictaphone recording that somebody took at one of his recent shows. But the point is, he put together what is a finely crafted piece of psychological work, and all credit to him, and that is why I asked for the permission to put it in my book, because all the psychological points are in it. Now afterwards I'll break down what those points are, so that as long as you include those points, but use different words in a manner that's more in keeping with your environment. I mean, I can't imagine for what this would not, A, it'd be too long, and B, it just really wouldn't be right for you, for example.
No.
In a magic type or a street hypnosis environment. It wouldn't be right. You've got to have certain pre-talks are also going to be structured to the personality or the image or the persona you're going to play on stage. or that you are naturally for street hypnosis in a social environment, as you naturally would be dressed. It's no good being dressed in jeans and a t-shirt like you do normally in a social environment, then suddenly going into this stage hypnotist's pre-talk, because it's going to seem so false and strange. It seems natural in a different environment. So it's about making it seem natural. But by the same token, if you just copy what some other hypnotist says, because it isn't the word structure you normally use, it's not going to come across right. You know, you might choose to be Harrison, the homosexual hypnotist, for certain venues, in which case, by virtue of the name and persona of the advertising, they're automatically going to be expecting something a bit, they're going to stereotype it, but they're going to expect something a bit Julian Clary or Ray Norton-ified. Yeah? So it's not going to be any good coming on and being all sort of businessman, straight-laced in a suit in terms of what you're saying. By the same token, if I was to walk on in a suit like this, at a business event, me, the way I look, using the Julian Clary, Ray Norton, that just wouldn't fucking work. So a lot of it is about the context and environment. Please do bear that in mind. I was using this, which I know was Andrew's opening patter, because I've got numerous videos of him using it. Now there's a couple of lines I just throw in that he didn't use, or we may have done adult shows, I don't know. But it would go something like, so you've been introduced all this crap, you're the world's greatest. You notice everyone, how everyone could be the world's greatest hypnotist, God only knows. But the reasoning for it is, can you imagine it? Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ryan, 87th in the world. Yeah. It's a bit of a negative suggestion, isn't it? They don't have too much confidence. So everyone's, you know, you are the best, you're fucking fantastic, you're fast, you know. I mean, if the truth be known, the voice on really should be for pretty much any exhibition later. Got someone coming on, they're an hypnotist, and it's like this. He might get them under really quick, or it could take considerably longer. It depends on how you lot react tonight. But it's sort of then giving the game away. Well, that is actually the truth of it. Some shows you can have, you're literally going to go sleep, and they're going to be fucking out of it right, left and centre. Other ones, you might be 20 minutes into the show and you've only got one person and you're still trying to get these complain. I don't know why to hypnotise. Anyway, the voiceover's done this bit. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to and on your board. And well, this here, by the way, that's a microphone. I'm just used to doing this with a microphone, so this is there. So, we did. Good evening and welcome to what's going to be, for most of you here this evening, I'm sure, a truly interesting, informative and entertaining hour or so. Now the reason I say most of you is because obviously many of you here tonight will be hypnotised, and for those of you who are hypnotised, it will be a truly relaxing, enjoyable, if somewhat slightly unusual experience. Now although you'll hear me say the word sleep rather a lot tonight, none of you will actually ever be asleep. Or at least I hope you won't, because if you're hypnotised, you'll be fully aware of everything that's going on around you at all times. It's just you'll have this overwhelming desire to do almost everything and anything I say. Now, seriously, though, having said that, it is impossible to make anyone say or do anything that would totally contradict the morals or the values. So, ideally, what I'm looking for this evening are about a dozen people to fill these chairs and volunteer who've got no morals and got no values. And I'm sure then we can have a great show. Having said that, of course, if you are thinking about volunteering for this melee this evening, the best thing you could do is come up here with an open mind, with the idea of letting yourselves go, relaxing and giving it a try. Because that's what we're looking for this evening, people with good powers of intelligence, imagination and concentration. Now there are a few types of people that by law I have to tell you, this is the boring bit, should not volunteer this evening. So if you're asthmatic, epileptic, clinically depressed or pregnant, please do not volunteer. If you're schizophrenic, fuck off to one of Paul McKenna's shows, excuse the language for next door. And if there's any children in, please do not volunteer. It's not that there's any law or anything about hypnotising children, it's just frankly, I can't stand kids. Jolly good. That was just a little joke, by the way. Jolly good, Father Christmas is dead. I'm sure we all understand each other now, yes? And What we're going to do, well, first of all, let me see which of you in this environment here tonight have got the best powers of intelligence, imagination and concentration. Which of you are up for being the star of this evening's show because the audience will be laughing with you, not at you, so what I need you all to do is put down your handbags and your purses. And if the women could do the same, that would be a great start. And then as the music begins, we'd like to put your arms out in front of you like so. And then it goes into the element that's classed as a suggestibility test. So we'll just stop there for a minute. Barry's smirking slightly through there thinking, fucking hell, that's going perfect. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was till he decided to rant about how he's going back to South Africa, but that's another point. Don't use that, because anyone, and there's shed loads of people out there that will have done, given the number of theatres he was filling out week after week after week after week after week in the 80s, you'll just end up to that generation looking like a carbon copy. I will admit, the first couple of years of me doing stage hypnosis shows, when I was like 15, 16, 17 years old, I did use that, which I've since admitted to Andrew. At the time of then asking for permission to put in the book, when we were actually on good terms. But copyright's great once you've got the agreement. So, it's about the points that you need to psychologically get across. Actually, I missed out one line from that, which doesn't matter because I wasn't going to stop and go backwards. I knew I'd missed the point where it should go in. I just didn't want to go in. Because otherwise it would look like I was hesitant, and that then totally negates all the psychological framework we're trying to set up. The line that was missing was, as I'm sure you'll agree, virtually everybody here tonight can be hypnotised, but it's not always possible for me to hypnotise each and every person that volunteers when they come up on the stage, because different people take different lengths of time, and tonight we've only got a short space of time available, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. That was the one line I missed out. Right, the point you're making psychologically is, I'm not going to necessarily do these in the order they were said, I'm just going to point them out because that way you're more likely to take the points and come up with your own way of putting them across to an individual. You're setting it up so that you're not to blame. Virtually everybody here tonight can be hypnotised, but it's not always possible for me to hypnotise everyone that volunteers because different people take different lengths of time. And we only have a limited time space available tonight, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. Now the phrase at the end is just classic sales talk, as I'm sure you will appreciate. In other words, you're intelligent, you understand that. If you don't, you think. We're already getting this dominant attitude thing going on. You've also set it up that if people volunteer and don't become responsive and get sent back, well, you're not to blame as the hypnotist, because different people take different levels of time. So that then the audience aren't thinking, oh, we didn't get that person under. They're thinking, oh, that person would have needed longer. So you removed the element of potential failure. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay, so you're not to blame. Only the intelligent can be hypnotised. In other words, we're going to set it up so that if they volunteer and they don't do what they're told, they're going to look thick and stupid. Hence, now this sentence is mine. Although I do believe Andrew started using it after watching my There's No Such Thing as Hypnosis DVDs. It certainly didn't use them. But the phrase of I'm looking for people with good powers of intelligence, imagination and concentration. You decipher what we're saying is if you don't become hypnotised, you've got no intelligence, no imagination, no concentration, therefore you're thinking stupid. That's sort of what's going to play on there. So you're making it so that only the intelligent can be hypnotised. So by being hypnotised and doing these daft things, they're actually displaying to the audience they've got good powers of intelligence, imagination and concentration, and that they are more intelligent. And people, as human beings, generally want to feel superior to others So you're giving them an environment where even though they're doing some of that, they can feel superior to the mass populace who were scared to volunteer. See how this is all starting to fall into place with what I said before the morning bread? Hopefully a bit more so. You're also creating an element of only volunteer if you're going to act the part and play along. Now you're not saying that on a conscious level. You're not going, I'm looking for people who are going to come up here. And if I tell them to do something, just act it the best you can. No, that'd be a bit shit for the audience in terms of what they're paid to come to see. It also would not give these people the excuse afterwards of being able to go, I was made to do it. So that would destroy the dynamic. And yet, we have said it. Because we said we're looking for volunteers tonight, at least in Andrew's wording, volunteers tonight, come up on stage with the idea of letting themselves go, relaxing and giving it a try. If you're up for a laugh and you want to be the star of this evening's show, and then it goes off in another direction, we may as well have just said we're looking for people to play along. This is your excuse to be a star. No one's going to blame me because I'm going to make you do something. That's essentially what you've said. But in words where that isn't consciously registered as the obvious statement, it really is. So it's not one of these, it's all of these going to free time. Now, you've got a legal and safety section, which, yes, there are countries where you don't need to do this. Personally, it's my opinion that you should anyway, even if it isn't legally required, because it's basic common sense, health and safety. It's got nothing to do with hypnosis. I was explaining that, asthmatics shouldn't really volunteer, not because the hypnosis does anything, just because they start jumping around like a madman on stage, they might get out of breath. A pregnant woman shouldn't volunteer. Fuck all to do with hypnosis. It's to do with the fact that, what if they trip, fall over, it could harm the baby. Epileptics is mainly more to do with, you don't know, they may be light sensitive, and the stage lights could trigger them off. Or the psychological pressure of being in front of an audience could trigger off. It's not to do with hypnosis as such. Asthmatics, epileptics, clinically depressed. Do you know the real reason for that, I think? Most clinically depressed people aren't really going to be that motivated and that entertained. You know, Shad? So you don't want them there. So the points that are laid out in the 1989 guidelines and the 1995 Home Office report, which led into the 1996 Home Office Circular Model Conditions, which are generally attached to a condition for a licence to be granted, which is as much as I'm going to say, I'll give you a disc on health and safety, or anyone looking at this, buy the transparency template, DVDs, you type bastards. No, so the point is that those points were covered. So you've covered yourself legal and safety. Also, you've covered yourself in terms of avoiding problems. You don't want a stage full of manic depressives. They might be on a good day, an up day. They might be on an up day, very entertaining. But Sod's Law says they'll be on a downer. And that's going to be one hell of a long, boring show. Right? And I know it sounds like I'm being flippant. These are serious ones. You get all these bits in place, and the rest of it becomes a walk in the park. It just becomes about being aware and keeping an eye on what's going on. So there is an element of, shall we say, problem avoidance covered there as well. But that's the beautiful thing about English language, or most language. A sentence can be interpreted in so many ways. So the sentence of the one people who, up for a laugh, the idea of letting themselves go, relaxing, give it a try. Sounds nice and casual, like that's what you need to be hypnotised. But on another level, without them perhaps even being aware, it is basically saying don't volunteer unless you're prepared to do what I say. So you're filtering out all the time. Okay. So, what are the key points? Yeah. Good evening, welcome. What's going to be for most of you here this evening, I'm sure. Truly interesting, informative, and entertaining hour or so. Oh, it's going to be good. Build up expectation, believe. Now, the reason I say most of you is because obviously many of you here tonight will be hypnotised. Notice we say many of you will be hypnotised. Not some of you. some of you implies a small number, many implies a big number. So the idea is there that we could do more, building up belief. Every time, say the word hypnosis or hypnotize, we click the fingers. So as it goes on and on. For those of you who are hypnotized tonight, it'll be a truly relaxing, enjoyable, blah, 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 blah. If you are hypnotized, every time we say hypnosis or hypnotize, we were doing what we call in NLP a visual anchor. Or as Pavlov would have called it, we're setting up a conditioned response. It's like the dog with the bell, when the bell rings, the dog salivates. After a while, because it expects the food that it's been having. So we get them used to the idea, visually, when we casually say hypnosis. Hypnotize, or when I say the word sleep, all the way through the pre-talk, but it goes with the click of the fingers. So that when they come up here, if they haven't already got that misconception from TV and media, you've instilled it in their head that that means close your eyes and be hypnotised. You could say that's kind of doing pre-induction, induction for you on some psychological level. Okay? That element in volunteers, that's, yeah. Volunteers being the key word. Aside from the fact that the law says they have to be volunteers, you're not supposed to coerce them in any manner, financial or otherwise, aside from that fact, which makes most street hypnosis, the majority of it, illegal on any level, even with the granting of a licence and insurance. The large majority of it is about hypnotising the person without them even realising that that's going on, which is actually a criminal offence of assault, let alone breaking the 1952 Hypnotism Act amendments. And arguably the same applies combining it with magic. However, you've always got to get out clause. You never mention the word hypnosis, therefore you're not hypnotising, because no one can prove hypnosis exists in a court of law.
Has anyone ever been done then for hypnotising somebody or been doing the show then?
People have been done in English law for allegedly causing psychological and or physical harm to people, either directly or indirectly related to hypnosis. I'm not going to go into mega death because that's what the transparency template's all about. I mean, that goes into every court case. There's been transcripts, McKenna Green case, where McKenna Gates, the McKenna One, it goes into the Philip Green, Lynn Howarth case, which he lost. It goes into all the incidents where people have been physically injured, people breaking their legs, which has happened at shows to the likes of Robert Halpin, who used to do Glasgow Pavilion. I seem to recall it's happened at least once to Andrew Newton, may have been twice. I couldn't swear to that, but if you go to the Manchester Library or the local library where they have microfiches and look through, I'm pretty certain the Liverpool newspapers and also the Times newspaper, there's articles from the early 80s where someone fell off the stage on an Andrew Newton show. There's been loads of instances.
There's a real one on this. My sister-in-law, her father, who I don't know, evidently went to a Hypnosis show, and he was conditioned, or whatever, that when he went near a tumble dryer or washing machine, he would shag it. And before he went home, he evidently did the same thing. And they actually went to court with that, which I find amazing. And that was in this part of the world, so. I've never met the guy, so my sister-in-law's part.
I didn't want to meet the guy, I was watching. Well, I never was it. The same British company with it.
Circus watching.
You know, if you actually look, the only element of this that's really relevant at the moment is that there are laws and safety things to abide by, so you're covering yourself there. That's where info I give you or the transparency template comes in. However, if you look at the transcripts from these cases, you see that the ones where the hypnotist has actually won, they brought in expert witnesses to defend them. And ultimately these expert witnesses have included people like Graham Wagstaff, who wrote a paper in 1981 called Hypnosis, Compliance and Belief, basically breaking it apart in pretty much the same manner that I've been doing, and pointing out hypnosis doesn't exist, And therefore, this person cannot be blamed for having hypnotised this person and causing this. And ultimately, that's how the cases that have been won have been won. Ideally, you want to avoid any problems like that, so cover yourself in the first place. So you've got all these points. Quick recap. You're not to blame. There's just not enough time. That particular person's going to take longer. That's not your fault. You've already got an audience agreement one, as I'm sure you'll appreciate. And they're like, no, I think, well, yeah, that makes sense. I want to see something a bit funny. So they're no longer trying to attack you, the audience. They want to get to the funny stuff. You know, that's what they're there for, to see their husband and wife or work colleague making tit of themselves. Otherwise they wouldn't have bought a ticket. Only the intelligent people can be hypnotised, which is complete fallacy. The more gullible they are, the easier it is to get in truth. But it gives them a framework where they can feel superior by doing the stuff, which therefore negates the fact they're doing daft things. Setting up that psychological state of mind, very, very important. They're the star of the show. The audience will be laughing with them, not at them. You're removing all the objections. Oh, it doesn't matter if they laugh at me. It's because I'm a star, you know? Only volunteer if you're going to act the part and play along. It's down to the phraseology. The idea of letting yourself go, relaxing, giving it a try, if you want to be the centre of attention, the star of the show. If you want to be the person that everyone's buying drinks for after the show, we give them a financial incentive. Except we're not saying we'll buy them any drinks. Because obviously that would be coercing them, and that would be against the 1952 Hypnotism Act. But if they don't know how to interpret that, you know, again, you've got to have some motive, some desire in their head for them to do it. Because the moment they decide in their head they've got a motive or desire to do it, arguably they will shut down their critical faculty, the analytical area, and go, well, it doesn't matter what he says, I'll do it because I'm going to gain with applause, recognition, my ego's going to feel good, I'm going to get drinks afterwards, people are going to be talking to me, you know, all those kind of things. A few examples, I mean, I put in, especially in adult shows, lines like, you know, a lot of people ask me what's it like to be hypnotised, and I like to say it's a very relaxing experience, rather than like having a joint of Moroccan black, except you don't get the munchies. Now, if you're working for a certain type of audience, students, and think, you know, they have a bit of the weed, and they're thinking, I can feel like I'm stoned, or without having to pay money, and what are the munchies afterwards? To them, that's going to be a huge motivating factor. You know? So it is about environment, context. You really are going to, it's like, as a hypnotist, you are one of two things. Robert Houdin, the French magician who was the idol to Harry Houdini, said that a magician is nothing more than an actor playing the part of what the audience perceive a magician to be. If we paraphrase that, arguably, a hypnotist is nothing more than an actor playing the part of what the audience or client perceives and believes and expects you to be and do. Which means you could say that we are, I'm going to use the one generic term, obviously this could just as easily say woman or women on them, but we are salesmen. We're selling an idea, a dream, a reality, an illusion. We're selling shite, intangible crap. Now whether that's therapeutically, to give someone the excuse so that they can in their heads go, I'm not to blame for this thing that I've been causing myself the issue with. You know, I could have really just put myself together and got on with life, but then everyone would be able to turn and go, why didn't you do it sooner? But if I get treated and I can go, oh, that person's helped me do this, then it's taken the blame and responsibility away from them. Human nature, people don't want to be in a position of blame. It's what we talked about before, making an environment where, rather than being blamed for not reacting, it's better for them to do the daft things and be given the praise of doing the stuff. So we are selling them an idea, a dream, their chance for 15 minutes of fame, to feel good, to have the ego praise, you know, to be bought drinks, to say them, whatever the motive is, we're selling them something. And in return, that trade-off, they do what we tell them to do. in terms of theory, and that's where I'm going to draw the line. Some of it will become, the other elements of theory will become apparent this afternoon when we're doing physical suggestibility tests, when we're doing inductions, when we're throwing each other on the floor in a nice, safe, calm, relaxed, health and safety improved manner. But when we're actually getting to the nuts and bolts of it, e.g. what to do physically to get to them finally to the point where the audience believe you've hypnotised them. And the reason I'm saying that the audience believe as opposed to these is because hopefully by now you're starting to realise it doesn't really matter. These people will come to believe, the majority of them, they've been hypnotised, if you create the environment where it's to their benefit to believe that and to carry on that charade, because they can afterwards say, oh, we made me do it, so that they get more praise. You know? Or I can't remember that. I must have been hypnotised. So again, they're removing blame for themselves. Once you've got that set up, it doesn't really matter. It's about the audience thinking, yeah, he hypnotised them. That was really good. Doesn't matter whether it's one-to-one, a small group, or a bigger audience. So there are other little elements, but the keys have all been covered before lunch. This afternoon we are going to do suggestibility tests, a good, best part of a dozen of them, and a good half a dozen or so inductions, some that are for when people are sat down, some for when they're stood up, some that are more relevant for therapy or a social gathering where people are sat down, and some that are multi-purpose, as in, if you like it, you could use it anywhere and it's still going to be safe. And then, towards the end of the day, we'll cover about giving suggestions in a manner that they're more likely to be reacted to, in the way you want them to, and even if they're not reacted to in the way you would ideally like it to be, the audience won't have a clue that something's not gone to plan. Because if you phrase things too long-windedly, it can A, make it confusing for the person who's apparently hypnotised, but B, if they don't do what the mass audience have perceived you've told them to do, then it looks like you failed. No, let's have everything set up so you never fail. So that it's always their fault.
Yeah, in a sense, it would have to be everybody, all the volunteers, not to play along. Because I'm sure if everybody else was doing it, you sat there thinking, I'm not hypnotised.
Yeah, but there's certain...
Everybody else is, so I'm going to be...
certain routines, yeah, but there's certain times you're going to pick on one person. Like the Great Balls of Fire example I gave.
No, what I meant was that if you sit there, I bet you're thinking, I'm the only one that's not really hypnotised.
Oh, yeah.
I've got more, and I don't want to be different, so I'll play along.
It's the sheep effect. Now, we're going to go for lunch in a moment. Now, when we do, I think we're one more point here before lunch. When we come back to say we're actually doing the physical stuff. By the end of the day, piece it together. You'll also have DVDs to remind you and stuff, but you do actually now, even if you haven't realised it yet, that's where this afternoon will come in, hopefully, to make it more apparent. You do now have the components to be a hypnotist. You haven't got the component yet for why inductions work, that's after lunch. But you have, in terms of, there's two elements to hypnotising someone. There's being the hypnotist, as they perceive it to be, and acting and making the right environment. And then there's the physical and verbal tricks you're going to use so that it carries on acting, which is what this afternoon's about. But one final element before lunch, which is the element of, again, ensuring you're never to blame, it's always their fault, and if something doesn't go to plan, the audience, instead of thinking the hypnotist got it wrong, thinks, bloody hell, what a good hypnotist, they know what they're doing. And that is, I'll mention this now, when I do get volunteers up and they're sat down on the chairs, I will turn to the audience and I will say, ladies and gentlemen, we've got, there might be 8 people, let's say. So we've got 8 people on stage, ladies and gentlemen. Now I hope that I'm wrong. It'd be great if I was. But from experience, I get a feeling that there's 1, maybe 2 of these people I'm going to have to send back to the audience. Now I'm not going to pick them out and embarrass them. It's just that I don't feel that their attention span and concentration is good enough in this environment.
Or the intelligence.
So, All of these 8 people now will be thinking, is he referring to me? So whether they end up feeling what their expectation or belief of being hypnotised is or not, if they are, great, they're going to brainwash themselves or hypnotise themselves into the belief they're hypnotised. But if they're not, when you tell them to close their eyes and they're listening to stuff, they might think, well, I could open my eyes any time I wanted. If I do, that's just proving I'm one of those 2 people and it's going to send me back to the audience. And then they'll remember, on some level, what was said before about, you know, intelligence, imagination, and concentration. So we're now creating an environment where they're sort of more obliged to remain there and do the stuff. The more often than not, when I've used that ploy, people who have actually genuinely thought, I say it whether I think it's true or not, but will often end up remaining on stage and becoming responsive. But because of the way you phrased it, 1 or even 2 of them, or even 3 of them, because you said 1, maybe 2, but you've sort of said it in a, well, hope, you know, I hope I'm wrong. If one of them does get sent back, the audience just think, okay, he knows what he's on about. If 2 get sent back, they think, he knows what he's on about, because of the way you set it up. If 3 get sent back, it's still forgivable, it's near enough to that main figure of 2. You know what you're on about. So you're giving yourself a huge safety net. And you've got all this stuff in advance in their heads, and you'll have done a suggestibility test, which is what we're doing after lunch. So the people who come up are the ones who've responded to that test, which is your physical way of essentially asking them, are you going to do this? Seriously, are you going to do what I asked you to? If they pass the suggestibility test, it's like them entering into a contract to go along with it. But little things like that can make the difference between it looking like something's gone wrong, or you knew it was going to happen. They're not afterwards going to go away, well, he said 1 or 2 people might have to go back, and all of them remained on stage, he must be crap. No, they're going to say, well, we managed to get those 2 awkward ones under, even though they don't know who they were, because you never point them in. So everything's always structured in your favour. Hopefully that makes sense. You're more than welcome to join me for lunch, because hopefully I'm going to be jumping in somebody's car for us to go where we're going. I make it 1:05, so I'd like us to be able to, it's 5 minutes to get there, 5 minutes to get back, toilet trip up the stairs. So that makes it like 20 past, we're travelling there and back. So we want to be back here for like 25 past 2. So we've actually got an hour for lunch where we are. And then we can get down to the physical stuff, which comes together so you can hypnotise people. Hey!
Right, so I'm quite happy to drive.
I know how to drive as well. I don't know where to go.
You go to the sun.
I would suggest.
In which case,
Well, yeah.
car park.
Just a minute.
You drive. You know you've got to do separate cars, haven't you?
You know how to get there. I know how to get there.
You come with me.
Right.
I don't think you go with that. Sorry, what's
We're going to lose before we go.
Right. We'll meet you downstairs then. I'll see you downstairs.
So who wants to come with me? Who's...
Yeah, all the...
Who am I directing?
I'm not sure. You direct me, but...
Yeah, but I'm not. Who's driving?